Okay, we are back for a second webinar. We are excited to continue on with this series. One just did a little check on our last seminar. If you had missed the seminar, you can always go to our YouTube site at youtube.flexrentalsolutions.com youtube.com/flexrentalsolutions. This is our area where we will be posting all of our different videos after the fact and other different training videos that we have updated. So check those out if you missed this or need to go back and review some of the things that we discussed. Last week we had about 77 people look at different videos. So let's get into today's seminar. Again, if you have any questions, you can go and type in the questions under the chat button. All you will do is hit this chat button, and that will bring in the ability for you to type in a message, and Sonia will be monitoring those and will be asking questions as we go along. So today we wanted to go over a couple of the virtual items in the system. And virtual items are really rather quirky and really fun to use to allow you to do different things within the system. So one of the first ones that I always like to talk about is how do we handle things that aren't real items that you need to add to the system. As an example, we've got this item that we call linear feet of 18-foot tall black pipe and drape. So under inventory item, I gave it a name, put it in a group, gave it an icon, and called it a virtual model. So the settings for the preset for virtual model are track by serial number is no, model container no, unit container no, contents available no, free pick container no, virtual item. So all it is it is a strict virtual item. With that, the quantity on this shouldn't have any quantity because there are physically none of these in the system and there are no contents for it to calculate availability of the contents. So normally what people will use this for is for adding a price to this virtual item and then using suggestions to trigger other questions regarding this item. So as an example, we have dragged and dropped in all these different contents into the suggestion items. We added the drape, the heavy-duty base, the crossbar, the uprights. We also had a suggestion from a gentleman who said, you know what, it would be really helpful for me to say every time I add one of these items, I want to calculate how much labor I'm going to need to set this up with. And so we now have the ability to drag and drop services such as labor into here also. The way we got these quantities is we went and calculated how many of these we will need for every linear foot. So we will need 0.031 pieces of drape for every linear foot. And the way we calculated that is if we needed 3 of these for every 10 feet, I divided that to get that number. So the second thing that we can do with this is group these into different suggestion types. So if we go under inventory and suggestion types, we created a suggestion type called contents without price. And the settings that we have for this are when we drop this in as a suggested item, it will be included in the price of the parent, meaning if we have a price for that particular upright, if someone rents it individually, we will not use that. It will be calculated just on the price of the linear foot of pipe and drape. We also have 3 different types of association types. We have add as next sibling, use default sort mode, and as is child. And for those of you who have used the contents of models, what happens when we drop in something that contains something else is it is a child element, and by default we have a setting in the system that would allow us to line meet that item, meaning I don't want the end client to see the child elements by default. They're going to see the package and the package price. And so that's what we're doing with this, is we're literally creating a content but using suggestions. So this item is included in the price, add as child, and the name of the suggestion type, or the tab when we drop it in, will be called contain without price. And then we created another suggestion type called labor. Saying, does anyone else have trouble with no audio? Let's see. Let me check the audio. And it says we are connected and says we are transmitting. And I just have mutes enabled for the end customers. Okay, Wally, thanks for the update. Let me know if anyone else. I haven't had trouble with the phone, but we'll look into that after the fact. Okay, looks like we're good to go ahead. So we created this labor suggestion type. So let's go back to our suggestion types, and we created another suggestion type called labor. This item, we said, I don't want to include my labor suggestions in the price. Those will be built separately. And we wanted to use the default sorting mode. And so if we are in auto sort mode and we drop this linear foot of pipe and drape into a quote, it will put the linear foot of pipe and drape and all the contents under a drape subcategory, because that's where we have it organized in here. But it will treat the labor just as if you had dropped it into the quote separately using Autosort and create a labor subcategory for us. So let's take a look at how this looks in action. So I created this quote called Test Virtual Model. And if we go back up to our inventory, I'm going to open up our drape, pipe and drape, and we're going to drag and drop. And we are in auto sort mode, as you can see right up here. When we drag and drop this in, I could put in any kind of a number and say 135. We need 135 linear feet of pipe and drape. Now, what you'll have is those two suggestion types. The names of the suggestion types will be created in tabs up here. You will have the contents under each area. So it's calculating quantity of 42 of these 18-foot pieces of black drape. It's going to add all these items as child elements. It is also calculating our availability of all the different things that we are suggesting. So we can either select these individually. We could also update these and say, you know what, I want to add a couple more uprights, and I want to add a couple more crossbars. Maybe we're going to have an egress area where people can get in and out instead of just a flat wall. And let's update that. So we can update these individually. Now it's calculating for 135 linear feet. We're going to need just a quantity of 3 stagehands. And we can take that and translate into, okay, are we going to take 2 stagehands for 2 hours? But this is just giving us an overall, this is how many we think we will need. And if we select that, we can hit accept, and it will drop all those items in. So here's our virtual item. No availability calculations. That's the quantity. And we put in that we want to charge $10 a linear foot per day at 1,350. These are the contents that we have here. And each of these were added as what are called child elements. So by default, when we generate this PDF, those contents will not be printed out to the end client. Again, that is a setting per customer, per user install. So right now, it is showing just the linear foot of pipe and drape, and it is showing the stagehands because that was not a child element either. And so if we go back here, the labor was using the default sort mode. So it automatically created a secondary labor subcategory and put in our stagehand labor there. A couple other things to notice here as far as how we organize suggestion types. You can drag and drop these items in the order that you want them to show up. Maybe you want it to go drape, base, upright, crossbar. The order in which you organize these line items is the order in which they will show up within their suggestion tabs. Also, under suggestion types, by default, we normally organize these alphabetically, but if we wanted to organize these tabs differently, we could say, I want my labor to show up above my contents with or without pricing. So now with that update, if we go back to this job, if I relaunch these suggestions, now my labor tab shows up in front of my contain without price. So that suggestion type here has an ordinal that we can organize exactly what order we want to see that. And that helps out if we're thinking system packages. What do we want to show up as kind of the first question we want to answer? What is the second question, etc. So if we want that to be down here, drag and drop, and that will update it. The suggestion types do not have an effect on how we show things here. This is just the order in which they show up within their category. Again, if I drag this up here, the crossbar will still show up behind the tall upright. It's just organizing things within this labor or within this tab, which order does it want to show up in. So that's a virtual item with suggestions. So the second thing that we can do with this is do what we call virtual groups. So let's go back to this area, and I'm going to delete all these different items here and delete the selected line items. On the top left in the inventory, we created a group called front of house. In the audio industry, this is where all the mixing consoles and all the stuff that is contained where you mix for the audience is. They call that the front of house. So we created a group called front of house. We created a virtual item that is called front of house contains the following. And then we dropped in all the different parts and pieces that we might want to go up at the front of house position. We dragged in about 6 different consoles that we might want to use. All these are different consoles that are appropriate that we might use. We added some processors for EQing and a playback machine for playback. Now all of these items are found within my audio subcategory in a totally different group. And the reason why people might want to use this virtual group is you can create groupings automatically using Autosort. So as an example, if we drag in this front of house contains the following, in Autosort it will automatically create our subtotal called front of house, and in there put in a virtual item called front of house contains the following. Now it's going to ask me a bunch of questions. What do you want for consoles? We've got 2 Soundcrafts, 4 PM5Ds, etc. So I could say for this job, we're going to use a Yamaha PM5D, and this suggestion type is what's called the sibling, meaning it won't be contained, it won't go into the audio category, it'll just be added as the next line item in the subgroup front of house. It's going to ask us about our playback and recording. Do we want to have a playback recording machine, a 360 systems? So we'll select that one. And what processing do you want? So all 3 of these were different suggestion types that we could use to ask us these questions. When we hit accept, it'll drop all the items that we checked inside there. So we've seen people do a lot of really interesting things with front house contains the following. I've had people use this in the audio industry for building quotes for their end client that says, okay, what does the monitoring system contain? Well, it contains maybe another identical PM5D. Maybe it has a suggestion type for wedges. What are the speakers that the artists are going to listen to? A suggestion type for inner monitors, etc. We've also seen people use this in the scenic design element to create groups of packages for different themes. So as an example, if you were a scenic company, you might have a job out there that you want to add very specific types of scenic themes. So maybe you have a Western theme that you've got to send out for a party. You could create a group or a virtual item that contains all the different scenic elements that might work for that. You may have hay bales, different fence settings, different backdrops that work well. And so by dragging and dropping that one item in, it can suggest all the different inventory items that you have that work great for that theme. So with these virtual groups, you can really use this to create whole packages and build the quote really seamlessly. And so I have certain customers who put all their inventory buried inside groups over on the left-hand side and have 5 or 6 different virtual or groups with virtual items in there, and their account managers will literally build 90% of their quote using these virtual groups. So it's just a different option of ways that you can help organize your account managers to give them the information that they need to work really quickly. So the last virtual item that we want to create is what we call a virtual package. Walter asked a question about speed of suggestions. And what he's asking for is, right now, when we drop this item in there, it went and checked our availability of each of these items when we drop during the time period of that quote. And so if you've got 20 or 30 of these items, it's got to go and do a separate availability calculation for each one of these items that you drop in. It is a known issue that the more items you add, the longer it takes to do the availability calculation. We have a request into the programmers to what we call speed profile that and find ways that we can improve that speed. One of the features that we're looking to add is do what we call lazy fetching. And so it would only calculate the availability of these 6 items. Then when we click these, it would then go and check the availability of these. So when you have 8 different suggestion types, we can speed it up that way. So that is on our list of things to improve in the near future. So let's go back and look at another item that we call a virtual package. So we created this inventory item called feeder package. And if we edit the inventory item, this preset is set for a virtual package. And the difference between a virtual item and a virtual package is the model contains other items or has different accessories. So virtual item is yes, model container is yes. So now with the model contents there, we have a contents here, and we dragged in that this package contains a 100-foot set of 4/0 feeder, a 10-foot set of 4/0 tails, and a shipping case. And for those of you not familiar with the production industry, feeder is the really large power cable that you use to get power to the whole event. And so it's usually a bundle of 5 very large power connections with it. We can have a price for this item. They're saying that we rent this feeder package out for $200 a day. This is something that I saw a customer of ours do. Normally, a lot of people will say, I'm going to have the package contain the feeder and the tails. We had another customer say, you know what, this always goes out in a case, and we kind of want to suggest the case and put it in as content. So just a different way of doing that. We had one question from CJ before we go further. How do we set suggestion types? And I probably forgot that, but let's go back and revisit that before we go any further. There's this pencil right here. So when you drag an item in there, it will be blank. And if you click on the pencil, you can then select what group it goes inside of, or what suggestion site it belongs to. As a side note, I've got a question or something that I remembered on. Let's go to video, and let's go to projectors, and I'm going to go to event. And on these HD20s, we did something interesting with this item on suggestions. We dragged and dropped itself into a suggestion type. And on the suggestion types, we actually joined it to two different groups. We had a group called online backup, and the setting for the online backup is that it was included in the price no, meaning it would be charged at full rate, and you could have a specific note for that suggestion. And then we also had a suggestion type called spare, which was included in the price. So this item will show up twice in two different groups. And then CJ had a question, and that's what creates the tabs. Exactly. So in here, these are the two different tabs that we would create here. On the barcode, we would have a tab for power cables, lenses, online backup, and spare. So if we go back to this test virtual item, I'm going to select all these and get rid of it and show you how this different type of suggestion works when I drag and drop this item in here. Now we've got 4 suggestion types. Do you want an online backup? Do you want a spare? What power cables do you want? What lenses do you want? So these suggestions can really be very helpful for either your account managers or for your inventory managers. It can really walk them through the whole process of what do they need to make this possible. Other suggestion types that I can think of when I would be dragging in a projector might be, what are my rigging options? Do I have different rigging cages? What are my stacking options? Do I want to suggest different frames and rollers and stacking options? Do I want to have different signal cables? Do I want to suggest a power distro? You can really do a lot of different things with suggestions. And you can mix and match those suggestions with packages also. So let's return back to this package setting. So here we are with our package. This is what it contains. And let's go to a job that we call test package. And this is on the newest version that is in QA support right now. So we are in a version that is not released as of yet. We're hoping to release it this week, but is going through final QA testing to make sure all of our bugs are found ahead of time and make sure it's working well. So we created this package called feeder package, and I'm going to change this maybe instead of Autosort mode to just insert and drag and drop it in here and say quantity of 1. So with this virtual package, this looks identical to suggestions that are contained. The one thing that we changed very recently was before we added this whole contents ability to expand and collapse these items, these packages were very much static items. And so we were actually calculating availability for the package and for the individual items. Now that we're able to change quantities here, this virtual package really, the availability is no longer relevant. So with the help of AV Matters, we put together some test case scenarios and we changed so that now we don't actually calculate availability of the package. We just say whether the contents is green for good, red for if there's an issue. So, as an example, if we printed this out to our end client, again, they will just see virtual package. They will not see the the contents, and there's the price. So by default, we don't show line item pricing on contents. If we did want to, we could uncheck each of these items and reprint it. And now when we generate this PDF, it will save that setting, and now we can see the line item of what's contained inside of it. Oops, excuse me, we went a little bit too high. So there's what's contained inside of it. So the issue that we were having earlier, where if we said, you know what, I need to add some more tails to this just in case, if we change this quantity to 2, it was affecting the package was still showing as green because it was calculating availability of these items here, not what was physically entered into here. So with this collapsed, we still have a negative number. If we change that back to 1, it'll go green for both the item and the package. And one of the issues that AV Matters was struggling with is what happens if we've got an item inside here that we need to resolve and change out to a different item. So with this -1, if we double click this item, we don't have any more of these tails at any different warehouse. We've configured the system to say if the 10-foot tails aren't available, we could upgrade to a 25-foot set of tails, and we don't have any sub-rental vendors or purchase vendors in here. So if I select to substitute for this item, it'll ask if we want to keep the original price. Really doesn't matter because we put this as a contained item, so it won't have a price. And now we've got 2 on this quote. We've got 2 more available. We own quantity of 4, and this has resolved this problem here where now the board is green. So that is how that works. And let's take a look at some of the questions. Can we make it default to open the package? We are working on saving whether these items are expanded or collapsed, and save that just as we have these checkbox. So that is in progress as we speak right now. So if we collapsed it right now, closed it and reopened it, that's the feature that we're looking to add in the very near future. Walter is asking when the release is coming out. The release is scheduled imminently. It is in QA. We have made a significant investment in hiring a full-time QA person, and their job is to give it the go or not. And we have a QA process in place. So for right now, unfortunately, it is out of my hand. I want to put my trust in them to say it is ready to go. We do have certain customers who are beta testing this as we speak, who said, you know, we're happy to beta test and we're willing, if there's a bug in there, we're willing to live with that. So if you are interested in looking at any of the upgrading to the beta for testing, we're more than willing to push that for you. If there are issues in there that are blockers, then we can always push you back. Let's see. Is there a possible setting to not open a container when dragged over? Right now, that is not a option in the system. That is a good question. Sonia, will you take a note of that, and we will put that in as a feature request for a future update. Let me do one other thing here. And I'm going to select this and deselect line items. And unfortunately, this was something that I was supposed to test earlier that I forgot to. But let me see what happens when we do quantity and change the quantity of the package. And that is a bug that we are looking to update also. So if you change the quantity of the package, that it will automatically update the content. So I believe that one is still in QA to be tested and fixed also. So that's one of the other features that we're looking to add is if you update the quantity of the package, push those contents and modify those quantities available. With that, those are 3 of the main types of virtual items that we can create. So as a review, we've got a virtual model using suggestions. We've also added a twist on that by creating a group with a virtual item and to use that to create groups automatically as we drag and drop them in. And then finally, we have our virtual packages with the change on availability calculations. We can also mix and match a lot of these. So maybe with this test package or with this feeder package, we could use suggestions that will suggest other different items. With those suggestions, those could again be added as either line items that are siblings to the feeder package, as child elements that will be contained inside the feeder package, or as default auto-sorted mode, which will be put in a different group altogether. I hope this is really helpful for you. We will continue to do weekly webinars and post these to the web. If you've got a suggestion for a webinar that you're looking to get some more clarification on, please send that to support@FlexRentalSolutions. And if you have specific questions regarding this, also please send those to support@FlexRentalSolutions.com. Thank you very much for being customers of Flex, and we appreciate all of your support, and we look to seeing you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.